You came back. You came back. You actually came back. Oh, thank you so much for coming back. What do you mean? What do you mean this is the first time you've been here? Did you see my previous video? I did another Straw Hat Bounty prediction video. Well, I'll have a link down to that video. Oh, alright, so you can go in and catch it and you can come back here, okay? What do you mean, no? You want me to just recap everything right here now? Forget it! I'm moving on to the next video, alright? If you want to see that video, there's a link down for it below, alright? Or if you want, just stay here and you can go view it after this, okay? Crazy people. Alright. That was probably a terrible opening inside that. Yeah. Yeah, that was a terrible opening inside that, but you know what? I'm leaving it in there, okay? Alright. So, yeah, so if you see my last video I did, the previous video where I did a bounty prediction video, like that, where I basically gave my opinions and thoughts on like what I thought the bounties of the straws could be, particularly after Egghead. Now, keep in mind, I'm not necessarily saying 100% that those bounties are going to be accurate, nor am I saying that those have to be the actual bounties, okay? I mean, to be honest, I could be completely wrong. I just figured, it'd be nice to actually think of something very carefully of what their bounties going to be, and I tried to keep them very simple and stuff like that. I mean, some of them kind of make sense when you think about it. Like what I mentioned, like Luffy's bounty being like 3,600,000,000. I basically compared that to the fact that they're in the middle of finding Saturn. Saturn is the sixth planet from the sun, so I figured it'd be a nice throw in there. Plus, not to mention when you do the Gorosei of 3 and 6. A possible translation that you can get is So and Ru, and So Ru can translate into soul. But it can also refer to soul as in S-O-L, and oddly enough, Soul is also a god in mythology, right? He's basically the god of the sun, who is actually the brother of Luna, who is the goddess of the moon, along with Aurora, the goddess of the dawn, or the personification of the dawn, okay? And to be honest, how Oda usually uses the sun and dawn and moon in different ways, it almost makes it seem like it's the perfect fit for it, okay? But please don't actually take that in 100% consideration. I mean, if you like it and you believe it's possible, thank you so much. But I was just basically just trying to think logically here, alright? But I could be completely wrong. However, as I went over to the videos like that, I basically stopped at Nami's bounty side. I did not reveal Nami's bounty, and I decided to say that for another video, okay? Now, to be honest, it wouldn't have been that hard for people to actually figure out what her bounty would have actually been, because in that basically bounty prediction video, I mentioned that I could see the lower class people getting 300, okay? With the way that Oda's done the bounties before, the lower class people, minus a few exceptions on the other Straw Hats, has always gotten basically half of what Luffy's got, right? The only exception to this was during Wano's site, okay? Because they didn't actually get half of what Luffy got, okay? In the Dressrosa arc, or not, yeah, it will basically be the Dressrosa arc, okay? Because that was when they first got the bounty increase to match half of what Luffy got, okay? We're not counting the first bounty that they ever actually received, alright? So not in the Enies Lobby, right? We're talking about the first time that their bounties basically increased. Well, the lower class people basically got half of what Luffy got, okay? Luffy got 100 million increase, while like the lower class people like Nami, Chopper, or Frankie and Brooke, they got a 50 increase, okay? They got a 50 increase, okay? And when you move over to the second time they all got a bounty increase, things like that, that would be after Wano, after the defeat of Kaido. They didn't get half of what Luffy got, but I think what Oda decided to go here now is the fact that, Luffy basically got his bounty raised to 3 billion, and any lower class people basically got a 300 increase to match that 3 billion, okay? However, since here we're in Egghead, I'm basically presuming that the idea that they're going to get, Luffy's going to get a 600 increase, half of 600 is basically 300, okay? So that's basically why I say they go with it. There's no reason to actually state that it's completely wrong or completely right. To me, like, I believe it's plausible, and it's just something we'll just have to wait and see when it comes to, when it actually comes, okay? So, and like I said, okay, it wouldn't have been that hard for anyone to figure out what Nami's bounty number would have been, alright? Nami's current bounty right now is 366 million, okay? And if you add 300 to that, it becomes 666 million, okay? So to be honest, it wouldn't have been that hard for people to actually figure out what the bounty would have actually been, And however, when you really think of that number, especially if you live in, like, in, say, like, America and stuff like that, and you grow up around churches, and like gone with people like in like Bible schools and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure you're pretty much aware of like some of the things that you've learned and stuff like that. Okay, on what the 666 could actually mean. Okay. So, and we all know how Oda does like to basically use mythologies from not just Japan alone, but from other cultures, and use those to basically narrate the story of One Piece. All right, to sort of like narrate the story, and like give like a new meaning of, like, for us to understand. It's like, like, it's not just taken from one culture; it's taken from other cultures. Right? It's not like a complete like. It's not like he's taking like everything completely from it and it's like that. I mean, he's basically telling his own story, but he's using small details, and like, yeah, I can see the meaning from that. I can see a connection to that. Be honest, there's no guarantee that he's even aware of every mythology in the world. Like, I mean, Oda does do his research and stuff like that, but I imagine like there are some things that he still is not aware of. Okay. All right. So let's go over the 666 in that scenario. Okay. So. Yeah, so if by chance their bounties do increase to another 300, right? Nami's bounty would become 666 million. Now, if you live like in like I said, all right, if you live in the United States and like that, or any other place in the world that is familiar with the with this number and what it means, here's basically some things that to basically sum it up, the 666 is referred to as the number of the beast, or in some cases, I'm sure you've actually heard of it referred to as the devil's number, right? I've actually had some people even refer to it as the devil's phone number, okay? Which is associated with the beast of Revelations in chapter 13, verse 18 of the book of Revelations, okay? Another thing to actually point out here is that the 666 in, I believe, Thelema, I'm not exactly sure where this place is located, but it is said to be associated with the sun by Kabbalists, astrologists, and numerologists. It is basically a solar number. Or I just basically saw that and decided to write it down. I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to mean, but I figured, you know what, I'll just write it down. I mean, like, we're talking about like Luffy's like the sun god and stuff like that. I figured, you know what, why not just write it down? Another important thing I should point out is that there's actually a variant of 666. Okay, so another one is 616. Which can be dated in the Papyrus 115, which is the oldest preserved manuscript of the Revelation. Okay, so not every place uses the 666. Some places use the 616. Oddly enough, Nami's first bounty was 16 million yen. All it is missing the 6 at the beginning, but I figured it'd be important to throw in there. All right, but truth be told, I figured both of these numbers could actually work for what I'm going to discuss, but I don't really need to focus on one, so we'll just stick with the 666. Okay. And this is just a small bonus, but apparently when I was doing some reading on this and trying to figure out the best thing to basically describe on this, I came across like the number 888 is basically viewed as the number of Jesus, or in some cases it was given as the number of God, but most of it gave as the number for Jesus, 888. It's probably really nothing, things like that, and there's really nothing really going to that on the terms of what I'm going to be discussing, but I figured I'd just throw it in there for the case of it. All right. So, because of the 666, I wrote down some possible things on what I can see it mean, especially when you look at the number in terms of mythology-wise, it can refer to like the beast or like the devil himself, right? And I figured it'd be important to actually go over some things that this could basically foreshadow or reference in some way, okay? So, the first thing to go over is devil fruit. Now, in my opinion, I think it would be best to go with the zone option rather than Paramecia or Logia. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say that Paramecia and Logia aren't necessarily considered plausible, but the fact that the 666, is the devil's number, but it's also referred to as the number of the beast. In terms of like beast is more like described like in terms of definition or meaning and stuff like that. It would mostly be used to describe like a wild animal like that, or like a creature with fur. So basically that's kind of like how you would describe a beast, like a wild animal with fur, like a creature with fur and stuff like that. So, and we all know how zones are basically like transformations into like other animals or other creatures and stuff like that. So I figured it'd be important to actually go with the zone because it kind of fits that bill a lot higher than the Paramecia or Logia. But to be honest, all three can be optional, but it's like the zone option. It has a little bit more of a freeway to it's kind of got like a head start. Okay, like you consider like it's already in the lead. It's it's up ahead. Like it's a race. Like they're in the middle of the race too. But like no matter how many times they catch up, the zone fruit is always in the lead. Okay. The second option is the Will of D. Okay. Now, when you look at the terms of like the Will of D, we don't actually know what the D means. All right. There's been a lot of theories out there. A lot of people have suggested what the D could actually mean. Oda has given us a lot of D words in the actual story itself. Some people suggested like dreams, dawn. Some people even suggested the opposite of dawn, like dusk. Then you have things like demons or devils. So we don't actually know what it actually means and stuff like that. One reason people suggest like devils and stuff like that is because Corazon, basically when he first met Law, well, I don't think it was the first time he met Law and stuff like that, but remember that Corazon actually told Law that basically the celestial dragons, who are basically viewed as gods, anyone who carried the name D is basically described as the natural enemy of gods. All right, and in terms of like mythology wise, the enemy of God is basically described as the devil himself. Okay, so that's one option we can look at. Okay, another option we can look at is Emu himself. Right now, Emu, while he's basically reviewed as like in terms of us, we are supposed to like see him as like a god and stuff like that, like a god odd. But at the same time, we're also supposed to view him as being like some type of false god, like a devil who's like in like a god's chair, like he's like the devil in the god's chair. Even though the lower class people in the One Piece world have no idea of his existence, we know about his existence, and we're supposed to basically believe him to be God. But at the same time, we're also supposed to necessarily believe that he's basically an imposter. Okay, we don't know anything about him, but there are some questions, right? And not to mention, he might even have a devil fruit ability that allows him to turn into like maybe some kind of demon or devil. I've actually seen some people suggesting that maybe he has like, maybe he's some sort of like cartoon devil or something like that, to basically go with the insanity logic of like Luffy having like the Luffy's devil fruit allowing like rubber hose animations. I've seen people suggest something like that. Whether or not that's actually going to be the case is really like a completely different discussion, but it's something to actually consider. Alright, so those are the three main things. Those are really the three main things, but you know what? I figure it wouldn't be important to actually throw in there, since we're talking about like Beast and like so I figured it'd be important to actually throw it in there. But here's a bit of a bonus. Let's not forget we also have Sexy Beast Nami. Okay. Alright, so let's continue on with the video. Okay. Alright, so here's something to actually discuss and go over. Okay. Alright, so I'm sure some people have actually already noticed it before and probably doesn't really consider it very important. However, when you compare it to three Straw Hats, Nami, Brook, and Frankie, they all have something in common with their bounties, okay? If you don't know what it is, I will basically tell you. So, with every single one of Nami's bounties that she's had, they've always had a 6 in the bounty, okay? Every single one has had a 6 in the bounty, okay? I'm not referring to the amount of numbers specifically, alright? So we're not talking about like 2 of the same number, or 3 of the same number, or even 4 of the same number, okay? It's basically just a specific number alone, all right? It doesn't have to be 2 or 3. It just gotta be that specific number. So Nami has always had a 6. Brook has always had a 3 in his bounty, and Frankie has always had a 4. All right. Compared to every other Straw Hat, their bounties have actually changed to basically change to a different number and not always constantly keep that same number. Okay. So far, those are the only 3 Straw Hats that's always had that number constant in every single one of their bounties, which makes me think that if by chance the next bounties, if by chance their bounties do get increased at their Egghead, and yet they're going to keep those same numbers in there, then I'm going to think of it more like this. Like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me 3 times, get out of here. I'm not falling for that again. Yeah. So if by chance their bounties go up again, and they still got those numbers in there, I'm going to think that there's going to be something. I'm really going to think that there's something strange, because keeping those same numbers and those bounties over and over again, you have to stop and think. It's like, okay, those numbers have to mean something, right? They gotta mean something, okay? And not to mention, it's probably really nothing, but I'll just throw it in there. If you compare Brooks and Frankie's numbers and stuff like that at the 4 and 3, but if you actually, the 4 and 3, especially when you put Frankie's number first and Brooks second, you get 4-3, which is actually Yomi, which is actually Brooks' numbers. All right, that's actually Brooks' numbers on his Delphi with the Yomi. Yomi itself, and oddly enough, especially since I'm referring to Nami's numbers at 666, and we're talking about like the devil and all that kind of stuff. Especially when you put when you look at Brooks' devil fruit, the Yomi is basically described from the Yomi Geru, which basically means to revive or resurrect. However, it can also refer to Yomi, which is basically the name of the Japanese underworld. All right, and oddly enough, when basically Nami, Brooke, and Frankie got the 300 increase, this happened during the events of Wano. And what's in Wano? Pluton. All right, we actually found out that Pluton is actually buried under Wano, and Pluton is basically the god of the underworld in terms of mythology. All right, so it's probably really nothing inside that, but I figure, you know what, it'd probably be something important to actually throw in there inside that. So it's probably really nothing, but you know what, I figure why not just throw it in there. All right. Alright, so let's go over this. Alright, so with now this has never been officially confirmed, but a lot of people actually theorize and believe that Oda has used Nami's bounties for to basically foreshadow or predict something for us to look forward to. Okay, so for instance, Nami's first bounty was 16 million. Right, when you basically Gorosei the 16, one option you can get for the one is I and move for 6. So Imu is basically 16. Okay. Another one is 66. Is the 66 million. The 66. Some people theorize that it was the foreshadowing for Lily and Riri, right? Because in Japanese, Lily can translate into Riri, and when you separate those in Gorosei, Ri can translate into 6, and obviously Ri would obviously translate into 6, so 66. And then 366, a lot of people theorize that it was actually a reference or foreshadowing to Egghead, which we are currently in right now. Okay, so especially when you look up 366 and you compare that to the English word egg, you can actually see some similarity there. Okay. Now, while we're on the topic of egg, I think it'd be important to actually discuss this in terms of like something to look at. Okay, so if we're looking at eggs, there are a few good examples we can think of. Right, so number one, we can also think of like the egg on Roger's ship. Now, whether or not that was an actual egg, a lot of people do believe that was an egg, but we don't actually know anything about it. We don't even know if it even still exists. Like, to be honest, that thing is like probably one of the biggest mysteries on Roger's ship that a lot of One Piece fans would like to actually know. But that's one thing to consider. Okay. Another thing we can look at in terms of like is like this. Okay, so in chapter 28 on the color page, we see Luffy, Zoro, and Nami being pulled by Shanks in a wagon, being hauling fruits and vegetables. All right, and we see some vegetables and fruits that basically have like faces on it. All right, and we see Nami holding an eggplant, showing it in front of Luffy. All right, and oddly enough, the one with the eggplant looks like it has like a female face on it compared to everyone else. So it's probably really nothing. It's like that. It probably doesn't really tie into it, but I'm just trying to think of like any kind of like actual egg fruit that I can actually think of. Right now, it'd probably just be important to actually go with it. But the chapter of the title is called Mikazuki. Okay, and it basically translates into crescent moon. Okay, and stuff up and. Yeah, so it's probably really nothing that. But another thing that I guess another small detail I can actually throw in there in terms of like egg fruit, there is an actual fruit that that's not an egg, but there is an actual fruit that's called an egg fruit, right? You might be more familiar with it as known as the canistel. It kind of looks like an orange, but it's not an orange, right? It's not even the same family as the orange, just like that. But or as far as I'm aware of, because I don't think it's a citrus, okay? But it's basically referred to as a canistel. But it also has another name known as the egg fruit, right? And it kind of looks like an orange when you look at it. It's like that. So, which could probably mean something. So maybe there's a devil fruit out there that looks like an egg. But to be honest, like I don't think that would be the case because to me, like if there was like an egg fruit and like that, I think that would be more. Yeah, I think that would be more of like the egg fruit or like crap. What was his name? That chicken guy from that one guy with like with the chicken or the egg fruit from Big Mom's pirate group and stuff like that. So it's probably like really nothing things like that. So to be honest, yeah. So to me, like specifically, like there was an egg fruit, like an egg shaped fruit. I think it'd be more. I think it'd be more reasonable to go with that. So it's probably really nothing just like that. But I just figured I'd just throw it in the air for the heck of it. Like I'm basically comparing like the egg, so I'm just trying to think of like what the egg could actually represent in terms of like fruit wise. But it's probably really nothing. All right, so here's something to actually go over. So when we're actually comparing the beast, all right, we're actually comparing the word beast. In Japanese, the word for beast can translate into kimono. Okay, now oddly enough, if you take the first part of the word kimono, the ket and mo, and when you gorsei it, you can get ket for 5 and mo for 6, so 56. Okay. And here's actually a few details that are actually kind of interesting. So when you actually look at the word kimono and like that for beast, you can actually get some old Japanese translations on it. And one of the old translations or the old sound effects or translation of kimono can be shishi, which can basically be used to refer to as such as the meat of the beast, right? Particularly for like animals like boars and deers. Chopper is a reindeer. I mean, he has the deer in the name, all right? But there's other characters that have that do have like a pretty good connection to the shishi, right? A good example would be Luffy. Luffy laughs. Luffy's laugh does contain like the shishi, and oddly enough, Luffy loves eating meat. An obsolete word of Niku is actually shishi, which can actually translate into meat. Okay, but there's other characters that have a pretty good connection to shishi as well, right? Robin is a good example of this. All right, so shishi can also translate into limbs, right? It basically combines it has the kanji for 4, so it basically translates into like 4 limbs, like hands and feet, and Robin does fight using her hands and feet, especially with the Hana Mumi, which allows her to sprout extra body parts, okay? Another one is Brook. Shishi can also translate into a dead body or corpse, and Brook himself is walking, talking corpse, right? He's basically a walking, talking skeleton, and with a pretty good afro. I do a complete terrible Brook laugh, okay? And another thing to point out that Shishi can actually translate into lion, all right? And out of all the Straw Hats, Nami has probably the biggest connection to lion out of any of them, all right? Nami was kidnapped by a lion, by Shiki, who has the epithet Golden Lion. Nami was basically featured with a white lion on the One Piece logbooks, Volume 3. And not to mention, Bellamere even made Nami one of basically Nojiko's hand-me-downs. She redecorated the sunflower to look like a lion, and even have it stated as "I am lion." Okay, so those are 3 things to actually consider when in terms of like Namis and lions. There might be a few more, but those are the only top 3 that can actually pop into my head. Yeah, so alright, so to be honest, those are really the main things I actually go over and like that. Those are really the top things. Really, to be honest, like to me personally, like if I was going to go over like the Delphi option, I think it makes more sense to refer to it in terms of like connecting it to Nami rather than someone else. It doesn't. The numbers don't really make sense when you're comparing it to like someone like Vivi and stuff like that. Now, it could be possible that you could probably say it could be a foreshadowing or reference to say something like Emu or Lily and stuff like that, right? Especially since like if it's true that Nami's bounties, like her previous bounties, were foreshadowing to those 2 characters, having it for being a reference to them could be possible, but at the same time, it still makes more sense to Nami, okay? And I know a lot of people out there believe that Vivi is going to be the one to become the 29 Delphi user number. And while I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that and saying it's not possible, well, but I will say that if by chance that Nami's the 666 could obviously mean a Delphi road, it doesn't necessarily make sense to refer to like a Delphi road for another character, because that doesn't actually make any sense. Like it doesn't actually make sense. So if this is a foreshadowing to a Delphi road, it would make more sense if Nami was the one to get that Delphi rather than Vivi. Now I'm not saying that it's the Niku Nomi like everyone else believes, but I just figured it'd just be something to actually consider and think about. I know a lot of people out there give a lot of opinions on what the idea of Nami's origins, like who she can be related to. Some people suggested that Nami could be related to Emu himself. I guess another possible character you can look at is Rox himself. I mean, Rox is basically is probably like one of the most notorious pirates in the One Piece world. That basically took the combined forces of Roger and Garp to team up to just basically take him down, and he basically wanted to be king of the world. But in terms of like how he was described as like basically being some kind of like monster, like some kind of wild animal that you probably couldn't predict or control. And it's like you could really probably describe him as a beast. even though we don't know anything about him, but it's like you got that feeling inside you that yeah, he might have been a beast, and it's like you might want to stay away from him. Okay. So going over necessarily it's like that. To be honest, if by chance that is what her number is going to be and like that, I don't think I can actually. I don't think I would actually consider it not accurate and like that, or technically that's not really the correct thing to say. To be honest, I don't think I can really consider it. Well, I mean, I can consider it. It's more of like, to be honest, like, I wouldn't even find it very difficult to necessarily believe. It's like, yeah, I can accept that, right? I can believe that that's actually going to be the number, right? It wouldn't even like completely shock me if it wasn't. Okay, so that's pretty much what I'm trying to say. All right, so that's probably all the main stuff to actually go over in terms of like the numbers itself. That's really all I got in terms of it. Now, I actually did come up with my own idea of bounty number for Nami like that, okay? So, but to basically sum it up, I sum it up into 5 different options of like that, okay? So, I wanted the bounty number to have 5 different things, okay? Number 1, I wanted to have a connection to the moon in some way, okay? Number 2, I wanted to have a connection to Luffy and Nami, alright? Number 3, I wanted to have Luffy's birthday. And number 4, I wanted to have a glass, particularly spell the word in some way, alright? I wanted to be able to spell glass, alright? And number 5, I wanted to have number 6. So just like all Nami's bounties always had a 6 in there, I wanted to have the 6, okay? Now you're probably thinking, you're probably saying, there's no way in hell you can fit all that in one single number, okay? Well, I think I finally cracked it, and I think I know exactly what to give, right? So the bounty number I had for Nami, in terms of like me, like personally, like what I'm saying is like I think it makes more sense to go with 666, but I did come up with my own idea as a bit of a fun. Okay, so I have 674,550,000. All right. Now let me break it down for you in case you're a little confused. So we only need to focus on the 67455. Right, that's all we need to focus on. All right. So 67 in terms of Gorosei, a translation, can translate into Runa, okay? Runa, or in English, you can translate into Luna, right? Luna is actually the goddess of the moon. Oddly enough, it can actually go pretty well with Luffy's bounty of 3,600,000,000 being Soru, being Sol, since Sol is the god of the sun, and his sibling Luna is actually the goddess of the moon, okay? It can also it can also be a reference to Lunami. Basically, the Luffy and Nami ship is shortened to sometimes be Luna. Okay, so Lu from Luffy and Na from Nami. Okay. Oddly enough, it has Luffy's birthday in there. Okay, so Luffy's birthday is May 5th. The 5th month of basically May is the 5th month, 5th day. So 5/5. And it has the 6 in there, right? It has the 6. All right. The first number is 6. Okay. Now you're probably thinking, well, where's the glass? All right. Well, here's the thing. So, I did mention that Nami's current bounty right now, 366. When you look at that number and match it up with the word egg, you can actually see some similarities here. Well, let's take the entire translation itself, 674,555, and compare that to glass. Okay, so basically, put these 6 with the G. We're doing capitalized letters because it makes more sense. Okay, so you put the 6 with the G, you can see some similarities. All right. You put the 7 in place of like an L. You can see some similarities, right? Compare an A to a 4. You can see some similarities, right? Put the 5 with the S. You can see some similarities, all right? Now, I know. It's a complete stretch. It's a complete ridiculous stretch. And it's like, are you kidding me? It's like, hey, why not, okay? But to be honest, like, when it comes to like the idea of like a moon god or any kind of planet god, it's like that, going over necessarily, I thought to myself, if Luffy's body basically turns into some type of material like rubber, then it wouldn't be necessarily impossible for us to consider the idea that if there is like a moon god dealt through, or even like an earth god or whatever kind of planet god is like that, their bodies could possibly turn into some type of like material itself, right? Rather than being some kind of mythical animal from like the real world that Oda is basically bringing into that story, right? Because when it comes to Nika is like a completely new god that is created by Oda with small inspirations from the real world, compared to real world inspirations brought into the One Piece world with small extras added in. Alright, it's kind of like a twist on itself, right? And because of that, it makes sense that when you think about it, like, alright, so why would it be any different for this specific animal in terms of mythology? Why would this one be considered a god compared to everyone else? or every other animal, then it's probably well known or well more famous in terms of like that. Now, it's not saying that there isn't like small inspirations, small details that can be considered to add into it, but at the same time, Luffy's body turns into rubber, or it just basically considered to me is like, well, maybe we should consider like another type of material that a person's body can turn into if like a moon god Delphoid actually existed. And to be honest, I decided to go with glass. All right, I figured glass would be the best option to go with that. All right. So I think that's all I really got for the video. I don't think there's anything really else. Yeah, so yeah, that's all I really got. All right, so I don't have anything else. So hey, thank you so much for joining me inside that. I hope you had a good day. If you hadn't got a chance to see the previous video, feel free to go check it out. I'll have a link down for it below. And you all have a good day. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'm really hoping to get my channel. I'm really hoping to increase my channel as much as possible. If you like the video, feel free to like it. Share the video if you want to share it. Do whatever you want with it. Technically not do whatever you want with it. Ignore that last part, right? But hey, thank you so much for just coming inside that. I really want my channel to grow, so feel free to come by and see another video, alright? Have a good day.